We find ourselves living in very interesting times, times that were prophesied long ago. Nevertheless, there are even prophecies in recent times that seem to be unfolding before our very eyes. And of course, here I'm relating to prophecies that relate to Messiah and redemption. Indeed, one of the most revealed forms of redemption, according to the Gemara, is that the trees and the land of Israel will give forth their produce. And as you can see behind me, as you can see at any market here in Israel, they are plentiful, bountiful, with lots of fruits. The land has given forth in a way that was unheard of in previous generations. Nevertheless, I'm going to go through now a few examples of some prophecies in more recent times that maybe are a little obscure and people aren't aware of. For one, we'll start in the 1100s, moving into the 1200s. A German sage by the name as Rabbi Judah ben Samuel. Judah ben Samuel predicted that there would be 8 jubilees, and remember here a jubilee is 50 years. So 8 jubilees would be 400 years, 8 times 50. He said there would be 8 jubilees wherein Jerusalem and the land of Israel would be under foreign domain, followed by a 9th jubilee wherein it would be a no man's land, the land of Israel and Jerusalem. And finally, in the 10th jubilee, we would usher in the period of Messiah and redemption. And it's interesting to note that, historically speaking, the Ottomans had control of Jerusalem and Israel from 1517 for the next 400 years, and concluding in 1917. Then moving into that 9th Jubilee, wherein he said it would be a no man's land from 1917 until Israel got again control of Jerusalem. 1967, exactly 50 years, 1 Jubilee. It was a no man's land in the British Mandate of Palestine. And finally, the 9th Jubilee, moving into the 10th Jubilee, that he said would usher in the period of Messiah, 1967 to 2017, give or take. Obviously, there's a difference when you're going from an English calendar count versus a Hebrew calendar count. So that's one. Two, recently, we have Rabbi Yitzchak Kaduri, a new manuscript, a new writing of from his youth, wherein he predicted that when there would be an election, and as a result of it, that election here in Israel, not a single government would be founded as a result of the election, that it would be a clue to the soon-to-be revelation of Messiah. And indeed, it had never happened in the history of Israel until right now, in this current year, wherein Israel had 3 elections, and even after those, no government was formed, and eventually it was formed through a unity government only now. Something that seemingly was an absurd prediction that has since come to fruition. Other types of predictions that seem to be coming forth before our eyes. Rabbi Dov Cook of Tiberias made a statement about 10 years ago during a drought that when the Kinneret, that's the Sea of Galilee, would be full, it would be an indication of the Messiah's coming. And we've only seen this occur in late February, early March even, that it finally not only reached the point of being full, but overflowing. Again, a culmination, a coming together of this kind of Messianic idea. There's this concept of 70 birth pangs that a woman screams out based on a certain psalm in King David's Psalms that has exactly 70 words. And these 70 birth pangs seem to be spoken about even in recent times. At the time of the Holocaust, there were rabbis, the Rebbeim of Chabad and the like, that made statements that this is clearly Chevlei Mashiach, this is the birth pangs of Messiah. And as we said, there's precisely 70 Chevlei Mashiach, birth pangs of Messiah. So if they explicitly said that these are the birth pangs of Messiah, and now we look at the conclusion of that World War II period 70 years later, brings us to another period that we're in right now. This Corona having the numerology in the writing and the spelling of Rashi a biblical commentator who speaks about in relation to the Passover offering, how it cannot be raw, how it needs to be fully cooked, uses the very wording korona, which is 358, the numerology of Messiah. And just on that very same page, we see a Balaturim, a commentator from about 800 years ago, relating how just as we were with our families in our own homes having to eat the Paschal offering right before the first redemption from Egypt, so too in the final redemption we will be, so to speak, quarantined at home with our families the night before, having to consume this, having to do this Paschal offering, the Seder, like then, so too now. So again, many indications of this Messianic period, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Someone who studies extensively on the subject sees that there's more and more unfolding that kind of indicates this, whether it's Zohar predictions of epidemics, the Rabbi of Komarno making a prediction of epidemic, of a pandemic, as, so to speak, a paved way, an unfolding of this process. We know that in the book of Job, there's this character, Elihu ben Barachel, who is this young child that speaks up and ultimately brings Job to tshuva, to realize that he's wrong to call out God. And our sages point out that Elihu ben Barachel also has this numerology of 358 of Mashiach, of Corona. So while we find ourselves in quite crazy times, we need to realize that Messiah and redemption really is an entire paradigm shift, a breaking down of the way we knew the world and know the world, in order to facilitate and usher in a new period of operation, a new period of overall the way the world functions. So Bezrat Hashem, we should go through this period with true joy, with true faith, and know that at the end of the day, it's that faith, it's that joy, and it's our tefillah, our prayer, that ultimately God hopes to see in us and will carry us through this period into hopefully a much better tomorrow.